Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and there's been some wild speculation this past 24 hours. Some people are linking a high-profile PlayStation 5 exclusive that just released, a game that's become synonymous with the PlayStation brand, to the Nintendo Switch 2. The only question is there any truth to this? Well, I don't think it's as far-fetched as some might believe, but maybe not necessarily for the reasons that are currently making the rounds. So we're going to break all of that down, as well as a welcome update for a first-party Xbox game, though this has also introduced a bit of controversy on top of it. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Seriously, thank you just so much for what you do. It means a lot, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with a PlayStation 3 remaster that's been making the rounds, Little Big Planet HD. Now, I'll tell you this right now, I would love for this to be true because I'm actually a big fan of the series. Some of you already know that the PS360 generation is my favorite era of gaming, and a series like this really is one of the reasons why. It's creative, it's fun, and honestly, they're just fantastic, charming games. However, if you've seen this rumor floating around, I'd go ahead and pump the brakes. This all started because of an IMDb listing, which, that right there, should be an immediate red flag. And then to add to that, if you actually read what the listing says, it says, note, this was an old community pitch, not official. So unfortunately, no, this is not a real thing. What's really happening here is that somebody, a big account or two, forgot to read the full listing before they shared it online. Now, to be fair, we have heard some rumors in the past that a Little Big Planet remaster could eventually happen, which I think makes sense. Media Molecule has had a bit of a hard time since the release of Dreams, so a Little Big Planet remaster or a collection could help keep them afloat until they're ready to announce their next brand new game. Again, though, unfortunately, this IMDb listing isn't evidence of such a thing. Okay, now we also got some good news for the Gex Trilogy on the Switch 2. Last week we had talked about how it wasn't functioning on the Switch 2 because of some kind of backwards compatible issue in the engine that Limited Run Games uses. So with it being a brand new collection that just released, well, they delisted it from the Nintendo eShop and warned fans, but they promised that it was only going to be down temporarily. Well, they stayed true to their word because they just announced that it has indeed been fixed and it's available on the eShop once again. So there you go. Crisis averted. We can all play our favorite gaming gecko on the Switch 2 once again. Now, our big conversation of the day is all about PlayStation games on Nintendo consoles. And while we do have a big game to talk about here in just a moment, we also have a couple smaller games to talk about as well. Sony, in fact, has licensed out a few of their smaller games in the past, and they've allowed them on the Switch, like Horizon Legos and Freedom Wars as two such examples. Well, they actually have a few more planned, including Patapon 1+2 Remastered and Everybody's Golf. Sony owns both of these games, but what's really interesting about what they're doing is that they're licensing them out to Bandai Namco for some remasters, and they are heading over to the PlayStation 5, PC, and yes, to the Switch. Well, they both just got some overview trailers. I will link those in the description below, and they gave them some release dates. Everybody's Golf will be out on September 5th, and then Patapon 1+2 Replay will be available next month on July 11th. Now, I'm also happy to say that they do have physical multi-language versions as well. You can pick them up on Play Asia, which includes a Switch version if you want to get that. So that's actually really cool. I do think that these are great fits for the Switch, considering they were actually all handheld games at one point or another. And it's just really cool to see that you can own some physical PlayStation IP for a Nintendo console. If you would have told me that just 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Yet here we are, and I mean, gaming is changing faster than what a lot of people have expected, including myself here. As for the big game, though, this is where things start to get spicy because a lot of people today are enjoying what is described as a Game of the Year contender, being Death Stranding 2. So if you're playing it, I hope you're enjoying it. I haven't started it myself yet, but I'd love to hear your impressions in the comments below. Nonetheless, though, fans have started to discover that Nintendo technically worked on this game. The game's credits reveals that Nintendo Pictures helped with its motion capture. So, that took a lot of people by surprise. Obviously, with Sony being the publisher, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see Nintendo in the credits, but what's actually happening here is that Nintendo Pictures was previously known as Dynamo Pictures up until 2022 when they were acquired by Nintendo. So, they've since changed their name, but it is a company that works with Hideo Kojima. I believe they helped out with the first Death Stranding as well, and obviously, they do a fantastic job. So it shouldn't necessarily be a big surprise that they're working on a sequel as well. And this probably predates Nintendo's acquisition again in 2022. Either which way, though, this has led to some people to believe that this is an early sign that a Switch 2 version will eventually happen at some point. A Nintendo company worked on it, so it just has to happen. And, well, I don't know about that. That seems like a bit of a stretch to me. I mean, it can't hurt its chances, but that's actually where I'll say I don't think that this is necessarily as impossible as some people think it is either. Again, not because of this. I really don't think that this is evidence of anything. But what I will say is that Kojima already talked about Death Stranding on more platforms. Some people might be confused because Sony is the publisher for both games. So some people actually believe that Sony owns the IP, but that's not actually true. They have some kind of exclusive arrangement with Kojima, but Kojima Productions fully owns the Death Stranding IP. In a press release that they made last year, they confirmed that. And that's why they were able to port it over to the Xbox Series. They even noted that, quote-unquote, Kojima Productions will continue its focus on bringing their award-winning IP, Death Stranding, to more platforms and audiences. In fact, according to a rumor that we had talked about just last week, the first Death Stranding might actually be announced for the Switch 2 at an upcoming Direct planned for this July. This is according to Wood over on Beat 'em Ups, which, I mean, this does kind of line up with what Kojima Productions said. They want it on more platforms. Sony no longer has the exclusive rights for the first game. Whatever type of partnership that they had, it has expired. We saw that. It came over to PC and Xbox. And if the Switch 2 is capable, then yeah, it kind of makes sense to port it over. So all this information could very well apply to Death Stranding 2 as well. It really just all depends on how long PlayStation has the exclusive rights, because again, according to what Kojima said, his studio now fully owns the IP. So with all of that in mind, Death Stranding 2, yes, very well could eventually come over to the Switch 2, just not because of Nintendo Pictures' involvement. I mean, again, that probably can't hurt its chances, but it's really not evidence of anything. Now, one more thing before we go, though. Since today's conversation has been all about rival consoles supporting one another, Microsoft just announced Hellblade 2's PlayStation 5 release date. It will be out on August 12th, but here's the thing. Whether you're on the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, this actually comes with a very welcome upgrade. When this game originally released, there was a lot of controversy with their decision to lock it at 30 FPS. Well, here we are over a year later, and they're finally fixing that mistake. They're calling this new version the Enhanced Edition, and it will offer a 60 FPS performance mode for both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Unfortunately, the Xbox Series S will still be locked at 30 FPS. However, this news has kind of come with its own bit of controversy. Some Xbox fans are a little bit upset that they needed to wait for a PlayStation 5 version to get a 60 FPS update, and truthfully, I can't really blame anybody for feeling that way. It really should have had a 60 FPS mode from day one. And if you've already played it on the 30 FPS mode, there's a good chance that you're not going to go out and play it again. And even if you do, it won't come with all the surprises that you get with that first playthrough. You really want that first playthrough to be its best possible version. So, with all of that, I really just don't understand some of these companies that decides to lock their games at 30 FPS in the modern era. All of the data shows that when gamers have the choice between a graphics and a performance mode, the majority of gamers chooses performance. So developers, you need to listen to that. You should 100% prioritize 60 FPS. Make sure that's stable, which for whatever reason, there are a few that just doesn't. And I firmly believe that that gives them bad press and that impacts their end results negatively. So it just shouldn't have happened. And Xbox, out of all companies, should know better. They have the resources to make it happen. Like, I get it. Hellblade 2 is a slower-paced cinematic game, so it's not necessarily as big of a deal breaker as it might be for other faster-paced games, but it's still not ideal either. So I do understand why this doesn't set right with some Xbox gamers. Either way, though, if you haven't played Hellblade 2, or if you held off because of its locked 30 FPS mode, well, then this is an awesome upgrade. This really is the perfect time to jump in to Hellblade 2. Again, Hellblade 2 Enhanced Edition will launch on August 12th, and yes, this will be a free update for current owners. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.